I'm a screenwriter. You become a screenwriter to do all the things that you wish you could actually do.
It's the Deadline Junkie Screenwriting Podcast with your hosts, Jordan Imiola, Kirsten Porter, and Rand Shammy.
And so I thought, well, I could try writing a movie. And I'd never written a movie. I'd never actually read a movie script. But I wrote Horrible Bosses. It took about 3 weeks. And then it sold in a couple of days. And then Frank Oz came on to direct. And I thought, boy, making movies is easy. Wow. It took 7 years to get Horrible Bosses made. But it was still a great experience. But that was a great experience, too, because it took all that time. And during that time, and I now realize how lucky I was, during those 7 years, I was the only writer on the movie up until the last pass. So it was great because I got to participate all the way through. It was bad because I wrote every conceivable version of Horrible Bosses during that time. And what they ended up doing was essentially going back to much of what was in the first draft. After I worked with Frank Oz for a year on the script. And then what we came up with together was what they ultimately sort of based it on. And that was film school education in itself, to work with Frank Oz. I mean, that was just incredible. So it went through a lot of directors, a lot of stars. It was a long time. The studio changed hands. It was amazing.
Do you have any favorite books on writing or just general writing advice?
I think reading scripts is the best thing you can do. You know, there's a lot of scripts online. Find the script for Boogie Nights and read that. You know, or just think about your favorite movies and find any of those scripts that are available online and read them all. Don't just read your favorite parts. Don't just read the beginning and the end. You know, read it and watch the way scenes come together and just the way dialogue comes alive on the page and everything. And I think that's one of the first and most important things you can do. And then, yeah, I mean, Stephen King's On Writing is a great book about just writing and the creative process. Absolutely. I think that's a good one as well.
Why specifically Boogie Nights script?
It's the best. It's the best movie. Read the script for the best movie.
What makes it the best?
It's just so cool. And then read it and be like, this asshole was like 25 when he wrote it. And then
Well, you've written feature films and TV. Is there one you prefer? Do you prefer TV or film?
You know, it's funny. You think you'll enjoy film because you get to stay home. You know, you get to do that thing that writers love to do, which is not be around other people. But it turns out that being a writer, especially in movies, you meet a lot of people. I mean, in television too, you end up, when I think of all of the people I've worked with, met with, worked on stage with, collaborated with, I mean, it's thousands of people in the course of a career. And it's not at all what I anticipated when I just thought it would be me, in my study, with my typewriter. It didn't turn out to be that at all. I've met a lot of amazing people. And I like that in film you get to meet more people, oddly enough. You're not locked up with the same people all the time. In film, you get to meet a lot of very interesting people and collaborate with a lot of different studios and places. And I've been very lucky. I spent 3-4 years at Bad Robot and just had the best creative experience of my life. And I would never have had that if I were just in a writer's room. A lot to be said for a writer's room, though.
Yeah, your passion is so palpable. I love it. Could you walk us through the process of how you got involved with making Eternals?
Yeah, so we wrote the script Ruin that got us meetings with everybody all over town, and we did these 80 meetings in 5 weeks or whatever it was, and so one of those meetings was just a general meeting with Nate Moore, who at the time was just I think he just started or was just about to start filming Black Panther. And we basically, and so they hadn't started filming Infinity War yet, and Endgame, but they knew where it was going to go, and they obviously knew that Phase 3 was ending and that they were going to have to think about what they're going to do for phase 4. So we ended up having a conversation all about what phase 4 could be. And it was just one of those really good meetings where everybody just kind of clicked, and we were all just kind of like feeding each other ideas. And it was just a combination, a chemistry where we all made each other better, basically, in the room, even though we weren't talking about any like hard pitches or hard storylines about where it could go. Just the general feeling was very fluid and fertile for the imagination. And so it was a really good meeting. And obviously, anytime you meet with Marvel, like, that's really exciting. So we kind of wondered what would come of that. But then, you know, months, weeks go by and you don't hear anything, and you just sort of like forget about it and kind of go on with your life. And then that year, at the end of the year, we ended up winning the Blacklist with Ruin. And we also sold this spec script to Netflix called Mimi from Rio that same week. So we just had this like crazy year where everything just clicked and everything went right. And then going into the following year, which was 2017 or 2018, excuse me, early in the year, we got a call from Nate basically and said, "Hey, I have this kind of crazy idea that I'd love to pitch you guys." And so we came in to meet him for only the second time, and it was Eternals.
That's all.
Yeah. So yeah, Eternals has been out for a little while now, and you know, how exciting is it for you guys to see it? I mean, you kind of already touched on this. How exciting is it to see a Marvel movie with your name out there and to see it on the big screen?
Yeah, I think it's like it goes in stages, you know, or in waves, you know, like at first you can't really comprehend what it's going to be like, the experience of releasing a movie on this kind of scale and having this many people see it. So I just kind of went in with like a blank mind, being like, well, we're just going to see what happens here. And then as it kind of settles in, and you go to the premiere, and then you go to like these general screenings with the general audience, and you start to see it impacting all these people, and you read the stuff online. Then yeah, it was incredibly exciting. And you know, we came from more like an independent film background, especially me. I really thought that I would only ever be an independent filmmaker, and didn't even know if I would ever work in Hollywood or for studios and whatnot. So I never imagined that this many people would ever see one thing that I had any part in creating. And I think like just in terms of the waves, the thing that's starting to settle in now is just like realizing like that this movie is part of like a legacy, and is part of a film like lexicon, and the same way that Star Wars was for me when I was a kid. Now this is going to be like that for other people, because that's been the really exciting thing too. Is like I have some friends who have kids, you know, who are like teenagers or preteens, and they have just been like loving this movie. And so I'm kind of realizing, oh yeah, like that, them seeing this is like, for me, like when I was seeing Star Wars for the first time, or when I saw The Matrix, for example, like this is that milestone for them. And that's a really incredible feeling, and something that I really, quite frankly, never thought that I would be part of. So thank you, Marvel.
Yeah, and what I would just say is that for me, I went to art school. I maybe shared the Scorsese view of Marvel for a long time. And when I started to sit down and like watch them, I really, really did sit down right before we pitched Kevin. We watched about like 17 Marvel movies back to back in a row to like really, just surround ourselves and submerge ourselves in the universe. And I've just found so much to love. But more importantly, I studied classics in college, and one of the things that I really loved is just that revelation that this is, for so many people, just a continuation of those stories we've been telling for 2,000 years about gods that are fallible, making mistakes with superpowers, shooting lightning out of their hands. I mean, it's the same old stories that the Greeks were telling. And the difference is that today, I think that they've taken on this role in society as kind of like a shared monomyth. They're a way for a whole generation to sort of have a shared mythology that we keep track of, that represents good, that represents evil. And I think they've really become a lot more than anyone could have ever expected. And it's not because, yeah, sure, there's millions and millions of dollars being pumped into print and advertising to make us see this everywhere and to love it. But I also think because they hold this special place in the human story, that people really care about seeing. It's easier to be human when the gods are fallible. I think that's something that I feel pretty strongly about. So especially with Eternals, to tackle that head on, I mean, we're incredibly proud of the movie. I think it's one of the biggest, craziest, weirdest movies ever made in Hollywood, and sort of the chance to make the most of anything is an honor, and certainly to make a very strange movie in such a big machine. It's a movie that I think is going to have a long life. I think people are going to remember it. So it's for sure, when you set out to tell stories, it is nice when people watch them.
You said you wrote the first draft in 3 weeks. So, like, how did you come up with those creative schemes? Did you dedicate 3 weeks to just like being locked in a room?
No, I wrote it. It sounds like such a cliche, but I wrote it at Starbucks, and I'm not giving them any share of the profits. But what it started was I based the movie. If it was based on anything, most reviewers got it 100% wrong. They said, "Oh, it's based on strangers on a train," which of course it isn't. There's one scene where they mention strangers on a train, but it's actually inspired by Ruthless People, which is one of my favorite movies. And the title Horrible Bosses is meant to emulate Ruthless People. And I love Ruthless People was back in the 80s in the heyday of the R-rated comedy, which I really missed. And I wrote Horrible Bosses before Wedding Crashers came out. There were no R-rated comedies, and I really missed the crude comedy that I loved in the 80s. So I wanted to write, when you work on a television show and you're in a room and you're pitching jokes, the first joke you pitch, everyone loves because it's the rudest possible joke. And everyone laughs and goes, God, if only we could do that. And then we go on to pitch the real jokes we're going to use. And I wanted to see if I could write a script where I used only that first joke. And so it was a combination of wanting to do that. And also I'm a giant TV procedural fan and addicted to Law and Order and CSI. And it was all about, I'm obsessed with always thinking about crime and murders. And I thought if I were going to commit a murder, I would, and I never see this in movies. I've seen a lot of Law and Order and CSI. It would inform my decisions of how to go about the killing. So I wanted to have that in the movie. And I also wanted to create a puzzle of the problem I set for myself was, what if you decided to commit a murder, but merely just by the act of deciding to do it caused murders you didn't commit?
Ooh.
The uncertainty principle, sort of. And I wanted to see if that was possible to work out as a plot. And I just started writing and just kept going. And I got very, very lucky. It turned out terrific.
You can find these podcast episodes in full on my website at www.jordanemiola.com.
Subscribe, rate, and review for more episodes. Thanks for watching the Deadline Junkies Screenwriting Podcast.